when they talk about top 5 offensive players, top 5 defensive players as well. So actually, my top 5. I want to kind of go like this by category as well. I want to go perimeter, and I want to go interior as well. Mm-hmm. So top 5 interior, top 5 perimeter first. So Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. I think even though you don't like Kobe Bryant, I think Kobe Bryant has to be up there because just as a pure scorer, like not talking about his efficiency.
Are we talking about perimeter defenders, or are we talking about top 5 shooting guards or top 5 perimeter players in general?
Top 5 offensive perimeter players.
Offensive perimeter players. Okay.
Yeah. So I think Kobe Bryant has to be up there, even though he's not that efficient. But still, I mean, he was he has an array of moves still, right? Mm-hmm. So he's still up there. I think Kevin Durant has to be up there, KD, because I think he's one of the best, if not the best, scorer of his generation. And then another one I got is George Gervin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think George Gervin was he was a beast in his prime, like from the perimeter. And then the 5th one, perimeter wise, you could go with James Harden if you're talking about the modern rules. James Harden, the thing is, people don't like his game, but I think he utilizes the modern rules to his advantage, and he's pretty much unstoppable using that advantage, right? I mean, the guy averaged 36 points a game last season, right? James Harden is up there. I have him above Iverson, actually, and it's another guy. There's a few other guys, Rick Barry, Bernard King, right? You can put him up there as well, Dominic Wilkins. But yeah.
Honestly, I think LeBron can be in there as well. LeBron's actually a very dominant perimeter player as well, especially for scoring.
Yeah, I don't consider him as much of a perimeter as much as those guys. Like, I consider more of a... I mean, he can do perimeter, but he can also do interior as well.
The thing with LeBron is because he started off purely as a perimeter player. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he came in as a rookie, and he averaged, what did he average? Around 26 points a season during his rookie season. And at that point, he didn't play in the post much. He mainly played in perimeter. So LeBron, I think, as a scorer, is quite up there too.
Yeah.
Not, like when you're talking about LeBron, sure, you can say that he isn't as good of a shooter naturally as some of these other players, but at the same time, he's so good at running a break and scoring. That's a type of scoring as well.
Yeah.
And LeBron on a break after a rebound is almost like what you see like a one-man show, like Charles Barkley was. He was literally like Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen on a fast break, where he was a one-man guy on the break, and you can't stop him back in the day. And that in itself gives him an extra dimension in scoring as well.
Yeah.
And in the half court, he was still very good, and he got better and better. I mean, nowadays, he's actually a really good post player now, in the post as well, and he's become a much better three-point shooter. So I think LeBron's also one of the top perimeter, I would say, scorers. Larry Bird as well. Larry Bird's one of the top that I've seen too.
The thing Larry Bird is, he never led the league in scoring. Mm-hmm. He was a great shooter. Mm-hmm. I talk about volume scorer. I would have been up there, but no, he's a good offensive player. I don't know. Like, I got so many guys. I forgot to mention Jerry West. Jerry West has to be up there as well.
Jerry West is in there for sure.
Yeah. Because the guy, I think he has the highest playoff series scoring out 44 points a game or something like that. So yeah, he has to be in the top 5 as well. I didn't have Larry Bird up there, but because I think, like, I talk about wing scorers, even in this generation, there's Adrian Dantley, right? Led the league in scoring twice, very, very efficient. You have Alex English, right? Actually, the top scorer throughout the 80s. You have Bernard King, who actually had the highest scoring average, 33 points a game or something like that. You got Gervin, you got Wilkins, right? Dominique. So you got so many guys, right, that can score well during that decade.
Yeah.
So a few other great perimeter scorers I want to mention. D. Wade. Of course, D. Wade in his prime was like a beast, right? I think D. Wade in his prime was actually better than Kobe, right? And I know that this is a controversial kind of opinion, but yeah, I think when he was in his prime, like, he was basically the closest thing to Jordan that we've seen, and that's like more so than Kobe in his prime. So that's my controversial opinion there. But yeah, when D. Wade went in his prime, like, he was a pretty lethal scorer, led the league in scoring before. And then we got T-Mac. I know T-Mac is kind of like D. Wade in the sense that his career was kind of derailed by injuries, but his career was even shorter than D. Wade's, right? So, because his injuries, pretty much that was most of his career. But when T-Mac was in his prime, he was pretty lethal as well, led the league in scoring twice. So he has to be up there, at least mentioned, right? And then Iverson, who I kind of already talked about, he led the league in scoring 4 times, which is pretty incredible, given his size. And then Rick Barry, who I already mentioned, but I don't think people realize how much of a lethal scorer Rick Barry was, because in his early years, like he led the league in scoring with 36 points a game or something like that in his second season. Then he averaged 41 points in the finals that season, right? That's crazy, right? He still has the highest final scoring average of all time, even above Michael Jordan, actually. So Rick Barry's pretty crazy. He also led the ABA in scoring when he went to that league. So yeah, he's a crazy guy. Pete Maravich, right? Pistol Pete. So I guess he has to be mentioned as well because he led the league in scoring before as well. He averaged like 24 points per game, but I think in the year that he led in scoring, he averaged like 31 points a game. And Pistol Pete would actually be quite lethal in today's game because of the three-point shot. Speaking of three-point shots, I got to mention Steph Curry as well. So Steph Curry, he's not like a typical volume shooter, right? He's not like Kobe. He takes like tons of shots and stuff. He's very efficient though. So he's just kind of like KD in that sense. But yeah, Curry, if he shot like on volume, I think he could be leading the league in scoring every year if he wanted to. But yeah, in his prime especially. So I just want to mention Curry because he did lead the league in scoring before, and he could lead the league in scoring pretty much every year of his prime if he wanted to shoot that much, right? But he had to share the ball with Klay Thompson. So yeah, those guys I want to mention as great perimeter scorers as well. Oscar Robertson, right? Big O. Most people don't think of Big O as a scorer, but he did. He averaged like 26 points a game in his career, which is quite high. That's pretty much that's higher than Kobe and George Gervin, actually. And people think of Big O as the kind of guy who does everything, right? He rebounds and assists and passes well as well. But he was actually a pretty good scorer as well. I think if you take away his Milwaukee Bucks days and just look at his Cincinnati Royal days, Big O actually averaged something like 28, 29 points a game. So Oscar Robertson has to be mentioned as well. Oh yeah, another one is Carmelo Anthony. Like, some people might be watching this video and asking like, hey, where's Carmelo Anthony? Well, the thing about Melo is that he really does nothing better than Kevin Durant, right? Like, he's just like a much worse version of KD. Like, I can't put him in he's good for his era, right? As a scorer, in his era, sure, he's one of the best perimeter scorers of his era. But if you talk about all time, I can't put him in the top 10, right? I think you can make kind of a comparison between him and Alex English because they both had similar stats. They both won one scoring title, and they both played for the Nuggets. But I think Alex English might be even a better scorer because he was a little bit more efficient. And Melo, I don't know, he's just not as consistent as Alex English was. So, and Alex English, no one's putting him in the top 10 top scorers all time, right? So, yeah, that's why Melo is not on this list. But I do want to mention him because if you put him in his era, if you rank him according to his era, then yeah, sure, Melo's one of the best scorers of his era. But if you're talking about all time, yeah, you can't really put him in there. So,
and the other factor is too, we also really have to factor in the level of defense these guys playing. Yeah. I mean, like we always go back to Jordan as well. He played against a much tougher defense, probably the toughest defensive era in the history of the NBA.
Yep. And
at the same time, a guy like James Harden, phenomenal scorer. Obviously, I mean, his borderline traveling three-point shots, the step-back three-pointers, they're borderline travel sometimes. I mean,
they're a travel, but like the thing is that he uses that to his advantage.
Exactly. Yeah. Like imagine back then, like in Jordan's era, if they actually realized that you can actually do that, and then Jordan actually just kept doing that step back too. How are you going to guard the guy?
I mean, it's like a cheat code.
Yeah. You put Jordan in the modern NBA now. If you can't touch him, you can't hand check him. There's no one in the paint to block his shot because big men aren't allowed to camp in the paint anymore. Yeah. And he can travel on the step back. I mean, that's unguardable. If Michael Jordan was in the league now. Mm-hmm. But Harden is a really nice offensive player. But at the same time, a lot of the modern offensive scorers, like say Harden, Curry, all these guys, if they played in the old NBA, I think they would have they wouldn't be as good. If they play in the old NBA with hand checking on them,
but that's the thing, we can't compare eras, right? Because like the thing is, we got to judge people by the era, and the thing I always say that if you want to say like he would dominate this era, he would dominate this era is people always, the great players in that era will always take advantage of era-specific advantages.
No, I agree. That's a good point.
So that's what makes them great in their era.
It's like Wade in the finals in 06. Right?
They all, like Harden is the prime example. He's taking advantage of his era-specific advantages. So
you see, here's the other point though.
Yeah.
Even though Harden is taking advantage of the modern NBA rules, his playing style is still a problem in the playoffs. He still hasn't proven that he can play that type of offense and actually lead you to
I'm talking about regular season. So playoffs.
Okay, so just regular season. Okay.
Playoffs is different.
Yeah. You see, that's the reason why, like
I wouldn't have Kobe actually in my top 5 in the playoffs. No, regular season, yeah.
Right. Okay, yeah. You see, and that's the reason why. That's the reason why I was never that high on the way, say, guys like Harden, Iverson, Kobe, the way they score. Because they look okay in the regular season when they do that. But I always ask myself, when they do that in the playoffs against tough defense, against elite defenders, and when it's really like serious clutch time and the defense is really on you, I see them having a lot of problems. And they've always had problems in the playoffs during these situations. I mean, Harden has always had issues in the playoffs because, like, my friends always tell me, hey, Harden's such a great player and everything. And I'm watching him play in the regular season, and I'm saying, well, you know what? The problem is he's not going to get anywhere in the playoffs playing like that in a 7-game series against tough competition. In a 7-game series, when the pressure's on, and then both teams want it bad, and both teams, they actually play tough defense now, and they put the best perimeter defender on you, like, can you actually win a championship or win that tough 7-game series with Harden taking a step back, 3-pointers with a hand in his face all game long? That's my problem with Harden. However, Harden has one thing interesting, though, is he has, for a guy that doesn't seem that quick, he has proven to have this interesting ability to actually penetrate into the paint and just get into the seams of the defense. That's one thing about Harden's game that I find very interesting, that I like, and I think if he does more of that, then he would actually be a better postseason player in the playoffs, is if he actually just penetrates more than taking those step-back threes. I mean, those step-back threes, just like Kobe's fadeaway jump shot, to me, is a dual-edged sword, When your team sometimes has nothing, you can get something out of nothing with those shots. Yeah. But at the same time, you have to use it at the right spots, at the right moments. Like, when you have other better options out there by working the ball around, it's really not that great to take that shot. But that should be a shot you should take that you only rely on only when your team has nothing else and the clock's running down. Then then that can be a nice little added weapon. But if you use it too early in the shot clock instead of working the ball around, finding better options, then I think actually that's when it's actually a disadvantage to your team when you're taking too many of those bad shots. And that's both for Harden and Kobe and Iverson, these guys. Whereas Harden has proven that he can also get into the paint with his dribbling. And if he can do more of that and actually create havoc on the opposing team's defense and then open up the game for his teammates and make that pass, then I think that makes Harden a lot more dangerous. Yeah, and that's pretty much what Luka Doncic does. And Harden actually can do that too. Both Luka Doncic and Harden can actually do that dribble and then penetrate halfway and then find the open man. Yep. And both of them actually has a step-back three-pointer shot too. The only difference is I think Luka actually doesn't take as many bad shots, and then Luka actually tries to look for his teammates a bit more. And I think if Harden actually does that a bit more, it'll make him even more valuable in the postseason. So, yeah, that's the only thing I'm thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, that's my top 5 perimeter offensive players. Jordan, Kobe, KD, Harden, and West. And
I have to give one interesting thing is, like, I don't know if this guy would be top 5, but I think this guy is really underrated. Yeah. Hard to say if he's top 5 or not, maybe not, but at the same time, I think I mentioned him before, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. So, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. So, okay. Yeah. So, this guy played with Mutombo back in Denver in the 90s. One of the most amazing perimeter scorers I've ever seen. Really, really, really polished.
Interesting. But he was never an all-star, right?
I'm not sure if he ever made an all-star. He was always those guys who was kind of on the fringe of making the all-star game. Yeah. But his teams were never really that successful. Mm-hmm. And he played in a small market pretty much.
He could be one of those underrated players. So you don't hear about it too much because he probably never made an all-star team.
Exactly, but super underrated scorer. Very underrated. He's actually one of the, for a guy who's not very tall, he's actually one of the most amazing scorers I've ever seen. Great ball handling skills and a great jump shooter. And the skill of his way of actually being able to get his jump shot off of his polished dribbling skills is one of the best I've ever seen. And the guy's just robotic on his shot. So yeah, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf is pretty amazing. Okay. Really good offensive player.
Cool.